Well, welcome, Sarah, to the Leaders Who Care series. This is going to take, I guess, if I can use an old line, this is going to take everyone in the audience to maybe a place where no man as women have ever gone before, right?
I hope so. Yeah, that's the goal.
All right, no pressure, but this is where you got to show your stuff. Um, but welcome. I think this is going to be fun and exciting. I'm excited about what you and our friend Guillermo are doing, and so I want to share more with everybody else. And let's start by sharing a little bit about Sarah. We'll get to the business stuff in a minute, but where you're from originally, now, family, something you've never told anybody ever that you want to reveal now, stuff like that.
Sure. Well, I'm Sarah Pousho. I was born in Detroit. I still have a bunch of family there, but I grew up in Southern California. I consider myself a Southern California girl, and was lucky enough to grow up in Santa Barbara. Had an amazing childhood there, and then went to school at UC Berkeley. So I moved to Northern California, and then got a job that moved me to Virginia. So I lived there for a couple of years, and then moved to Indiana, lived there for a couple of years, but been back in Northern California for since 1998 actually. So this is where I live now, and still try to spend as much time as I can in Southern California. I have lots of relatives in Detroit, and then I've got immediate family here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and then a sister that lives in Los Angeles. So there's the brief overview.
Oh, I don't know if I knew you had a sister in Los Angeles. So cool. All right. Well, that's another connection point you can
Yeah.
play with. And anything you've never told anybody?
Um, that's a good question and was not in my prep question. So I don't know. I can't think of anything. I'm pretty much an open book. So I don't think so.
Yeah, that wouldn't be in your prep question type of thing. That's why we give questions only very, very close to the actual event here. Well, you talked about siblings a little bit. What were you like as a kid or teenager? Were you like Barbie girl or tomboy? Did you play video games? Were you watching Star Trek all day? Sports, music? What were you like?
So yes to all of the above, except for watching
Oh,
Star Trek. We weren't really allowed to watch much TV. So that was the only thing I didn't do when I was growing up. I didn't do much TV, but I was a huge reader. I guess I had Barbies, but I also loved Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs and things that you could build. I considered myself a tomboy also. I played every sport. I started playing soccer in fourth grade and didn't quit really until after college, and played all the sports in school. I did everything science related I could. I was really into science, and crafts, tons of crafts. I learned, actually, that's how I learned to sew, is because I had Barbies and learned to sew by making little Barbie outfits. So kind of all of the above. I tried to get involved in as many things as I could. I played the piano, so had the music thing in there too. So yeah, just really a social person and into lots of different things and learning. My sense of curiosity hangs with me today, but yeah, I love it. I like it all.
Well, it's interesting because I was on a call a little bit ago. We were talking about diversity of experiences, and you used in different physical muscles, memory muscles, stuff like that for different things that help you with the other things that you're
Hmm.
involved in, and then you kind of get as you go up a little more, attuned, if you will, to some specific things. Then, but all those other things, even without us knowing it, actually make us smarter, better, whatnot, in whatever we pick to do. Um,
Hmm.
even if it's just being understanding where things are derived from or how they're built or things of that nature. So good for you, good for your parents too. Although I'm really glad my parents let me watch Star Trek. So, but um, if you move along and you're growing up a little bit, your journey, and starting with education, it really intrigued me, and I want to know what intrigued you to get into a bachelor's in rhetoric.
I wish I had a really exciting story to tell you about that backstory, but what happened was I wanted to be an astronaut since I was a little girl, and I
Hmm.
did everything science related in junior high and high school. All my papers were about something space related, and my goal was I'm going to go to school, get an astronomy degree, and then I'm going to fly for the armed forces, and then I'm going to become an astronaut. So I went to UC Berkeley and started as a major in astronomy, and realized that I get how things work. So I was getting A's in all like my physics labs because I get how things work, but don't ask me to write it down. Don't ask me to put a formula on a test. And so I was taking, calculus for engineers and all these really high level math and astronomy and physics classes, and was realizing that I was getting A's and B's in rhetoric and French and Spanish and all these language classes, and not doing so hot in the science related classes, which was super frustrating as someone who considered herself a science person going into Cal. So
Right.
sadly, the reason why I ended up majoring in rhetoric was I was getting good grades in that, and I wanted to graduate. So I also had some amazing professors too. I got to give credit to them. And but I think that really kind of set the tone for my career, because in rhetoric, it's basically it's what is the point this person is trying to get across, and are they effective at doing it? And we studied that in movies, fiction, nonfiction, presidential debates, poetry. I mean, any format you could think of. And I think that kind of really helped me sort of inadvertently land in a sales and licensing career.
It's after you describe it, it seems like that should almost be mandatory for everybody to take.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah. It was way more
because
fun than English, I'll tell you that. Rhetoric was more fun.
plus you learn certain things in engineering and accounting and this and that, and you'll learn a little bit of human element skills depending on how good the profs are or whatever. But specifically to learn that, I think is actually super valuable. So probably give you a step up.
I still use it today.
There's a reason for everything to happen, right?
Yep. I am a
Um,
true believer in that. Yep.
Me too. Well, when we founded Fifth Element, which is there was a reason for that to happen too, because it was by certain relationships that we got together. It was founded on the premise that leaders in their organizations will always do better when they're doing good. We've chatted about this a little
Uh-huh.
bit.
Yep.
Share with us, as you mentioned, how you landed in sales and licensing across different sectors too. Again, speaking of
Mhm.
diversity, again, going back to your kid,
Yes.
how did that happen?
Well, when, as I mentioned, my goal was to be an astronaut. When you graduate with a rhetoric degree, NASA doesn't really need you, at least back in the 1990 when I graduated. So it was like, uh-oh, now what do I do? So I needed to make a living. So I just started applying for jobs, and I got a temp job that was going to last for 2 weeks tops. And I was there for 5 years. And it was for a calendar publisher, the first calendar publisher that ever did licensed calendars.
Oh.
So this will date myself, but we did supermodel calendars featuring Kathy Ireland and Stephanie Seymour and Elle McPherson. And then we did the Nike basketball team. So Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley. And so that's how I got my start. I ended up in the sales department there doing support for that. And that grew into leading up a sales team, which led to another job where I did sales and then got introduced to the licensing world, which led to another job where I was vice president of sales and licensing, and another job. So I just kind of worked myself up the ladder in various different industries, including publishing, paper-based products like calendars and journals, toys, electronic toys, fine art supplies, sustainable materials, and yeah, just kind of bebopped around to learn as much as I could, and so I sort of fell into it, and then was good at it and liked it, and kept going.
So you kind of fell into a different type of space, if you will,
Yes.
um, that I can see right away that taught you, or you used a lot of your skill sets for sure in everything you did, whether it was sales, licensing, partnerships, relationships, types of
Yes.
products, new things like the calendar, and whatnot. So in a way, pretty interesting, and that gives you again more of a foundation for the future. How much did that work influence your personal vision, your knowledge, your relationships, and as an inflection point, also leading to volunteering? You were volunteering. You still kept that thing. You volunteering at NASA's Ames Research Center.
Yes.
Um, how did the work you did there? Because someone might think, oh, that's just totally disassociated. You were doing sales and licensing, but how did it affect you?
Well, in a few different ways. The My career, I was lucky enough to work for everything from a tiny startup doing around less than, when I started with them, less than $1 million, and also a Fortune 100 company, and then everything in between, and got to see companies grow from nothing to a lot. So having to wear many hats really helped, because most of the companies that I worked for were small companies. So even though my job description said I had to do this, I ended up doing so much more and learned so much more because of that. And then the NASA Ames happened when I moved back to the Bay Area, and after living in a couple of other places. And I really wanted to just keep my foot in something that I was excited about. And I thought, well, if I work at NASA Ames, first of all, I'm super excited about it, which also opened up the door for me to have, since I had security clearance now, I could go to some of the
Oh,
open houses that they had. So I
oh,
got to see like how they experimented with new aircraft, and how they experimented with in a vacuum of things that happen in space in a vacuum and things like that. So got to learn more too, but also help fifth graders. Those were the ones that came through in the place where I was volunteering, and teach them about the Bernoulli principle, and about orbital dynamics and things like that. So that was fun. Um, but yeah, now what was the original question? Have I answered
no,
it?
no, you had, because I wanted to know how it influenced your personal vision, and obviously your personal vision was maintained even though you weren't working yet, but it gave you a foundation, and then you still found a way to get involved in space by, I guess you were
Yes.
volunteering at first with that
Yes.
NASA, right?
Yes, that was volunteer, purely volunteer. And I think what happened was, as I progressed in my career, I started managing more and more people and more teams, and I really enjoyed that. And I got a lot of that from my father. I saw him mentor people, and he was really excited about building good teams and good people, and so that part was also fun too. Like, helping people launch and getting them to see, no pun intended, getting them to see what they were good at and utilize their skills and have them be good at what they do too, which helps everybody. Along the way, a lot of people are like, you should start a company, you should be CEO, you should be doing this. And I was like, nah, I don't need to be in charge of all that. I like doing what I'm doing. I'm good. So about 3 years ago, when I just decided, look, I've been in consumer products forever. It's not the industry I wanted, but I've been here for a long time. I have a lot of skills, especially with contract negotiation and working with international and global teams. Um, I really want to get into space. That's where my heart has been, which was why I
Right.
was volunteering at NASA. So I reached out to an old friend who I know you know, Guillermo Sunline. He and I met at UC Berkeley, actually. So I like to tease him that we've known each other since the 1900s. And he also loves space. That's how we sort of bonded. We met in a rhetoric class and bonded over our mutual love of space and
Oh.
soccer. We played on a soccer team together too. And he got into it 20 years ago, so way sooner than I realized I should jump back into that. And at the same time, so about 3 years ago, he kind of mentored me, brought me into the space, recommended what conferences I should go to, and pretty soon I was introducing him to people in the space network. So I knew that
Uh,
that's sort of when I had arrived. uh, he had this idea for Space Bridge Partners germinating for a few years, and I was helping him behind the scenes on it. And last year he said, "Why don't you just run it?" And that sort of came at the same time I had been working with a coach who really helped me, define what my dream job was, which was to be working in space and hopefully managing people. And she's, after all this work, said, it sort of sounds like you should be a CEO, which was what people had been telling me my whole career. So she sort of, all the stars aligned, again, no pun intended. And when Guillermo asked me to come on board, it seemed like the perfect opportunity I couldn't pass up.
So I want to come back to Space Bridge Partners and get a little more into that. But you mentioned something, they were saying this to you all along, and sometimes we're ready to hear something, sometimes not. There's a reason why we're doing certain things, hopefully sometimes that lead to things. Um, we launched our firm on International Women's Day 6 years ago at the UN. So we do a lot of work with women leadership, women empowerment. Describe your journey as a woman in the corporate world, and now as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, now in space
Mhm.
and whatnot, a lot of diverse partnerships, a lot of cultures, a lot of different people, a lot of judgment, categorization, all the words you want to use, because it was there and it's gotten a lot better, but it's still not 100% there. How was that for you going along from early to now?
That's been an interesting. I've been struggling with how to answer this question, because I don't want to dive too deep into anything negative. But I can tell you I experienced a lot of sexual harassment. I experienced a lot of if I'm in the room with one of my colleagues that's male, they would only talk to the man in the room. So a lot of frustration that way. And I remember when the Me Too movement first happened, all the females in my family got together, and it's like, well, have this ever happen to you? And it was every single person was like, yeah. And I've had some really crude
Yeah.
comments directed my way as well. At the same time, I've had some amazing working relationship with, and I don't want to overgeneralize. I've had some great working relationships with men, including currently.
Sure.
But over the years, I'm realizing through my career, when I got the most done, the most meaningful work, the most work just in general, and advance things the most quickly was when I was working with other women across the table. And that's exciting to hear. And I'll say also, or exciting to feel. I'll say also that getting those kind of responses from other males in the rooms just sort of made me dig my heels in even harder and to say like, well, screw you,
I'm sure it did.
I'm gonna do it, yeah. And so it sort of helped propel me in my career as well. And the men that I got along the most with, actually, we had mutual respect. There was great at collaborating. They going back to my rhetoric roots, they listened to what I was saying and I listened to what they were saying, and we could agree to disagree, but it was the dialogue was the best dialogue. And that's what really helped. So, it's been kind of a wild ride, but I'm excited to be here. And I will say, when I first started to like I mentioned 3 years ago, to get into the space industry, I played the female card. I reached out to women that I wanted to meet that I didn't know, and just sent a cold email just saying, hey, I'm transitioning after many years in a different industry. I'm excited about what you're doing. And every single woman replied to me.
Yeah,
So that
that's
was
that,
really
that, that
exciting.
that's brilliant. You can either um go, the doom route and nothing's gonna
Yeah.
happen, that's and mourn about it and whatnot. And it's okay to be pissed off. I know a lot of women that went through a lot of stuff, and unfortunately, because it was the era or whatever,
Yeah.
the way it
Yeah.
was. But it is great to see a lot more women in tech and engineering, and obviously leadership positions, and hopefully more and more even in mid-management positions, because we need to have succession to the ones that are in
Yes.
leadership positions.
Yeah.
But it's also really smart what you're saying of finding a way, to make, being different is actually a good thing a lot of times,
Yes.
and to use it in a positive way. So I think that's fantastic advice to, to do that. Talked a little bit about, Space Bridge. I know you started with Guillermo on Humans to Venus, and I've always, and this will be another discussion, I've always loved the conversation with Guillermo on, when we're going to start a society on Venus, who do we bring first and second, and what does that society look like? It's a
Yeah.
fascinating, mind-blowing almost discussion, because then it's like, well, if that's what really is the way it should work, why don't we do that here? Because you always hear
Exactly.
people talk about, why are we spending all this money out there? Well, because it creates good things for here too.
Yes.
Um, so I'm into that conversation too, but tell us, how Space Bridge, started, why it started, what's the goal, and what's happening.
Well, Space Bridge Partners started, like I said, as an idea that Guillermo had. He realized that there is a funding gap with really important missions centered on science and exploration, usually put together by universities or other nonprofits, but they can't get the funding they need to get it off the ground because people that would normally invest, like VCs, don't see a return on investment because this is a pure science. And now it could down the road lead to commercial profitability, but we got to start somewhere with these science missions, which you mentioned I bring back the Apollo missions. We wouldn't have GPS today if it weren't for the Apollo missions.
Right.
So, how do we help these really key important scientific missions literally get off the ground? And so they get grant money, they get government funding, but that only gets them so far. So Spacebridge Partners was created to fill that gap and to help further science and look into human exploration and advanced technology that might not necessarily have a commercial impact or commercial ROI, at least in the short term. So that's how we came about. Yeah.
But from experience of being around people like Guillermo and whatnot, and even Bill Nelson, who we know, and
Mhm.
whatnot, there's always inventions and amazing stuff that comes out, like you said, GPS and a million others that we don't even know, but medical stuff that comes out, frozen food that
Yeah,
comes out.
exactly.
I mean, all sorts of things. So I think it's brilliant and super exciting. And if there's no visionaries out there, how is anything going to be happen anyway?
Exactly. Yep.
So no, that's pretty cool. You know, we're talking about tech also. The fourth industrial revolution is basically about technology, AI,
Mhm.
VR, AR, you name it, stuff like that. But they are saying that the fifth one is about humanity. And, you know, it's about, you know, the humans work for the technology and AI, or is it a tool for us to get better in how we live our lives? Um, you know, at Fifth, we focus on leveraging technology and combining impact with talent and talent with impact. Um, and that's the only way I think you're going to have sustainable, enduring, positive results. AI is happening super fast, though.
Yep.
Everything's happening super fast, and we're finding that the true leaders who care are more excited about what we used to call soft skills, which I've never liked. So we call them high skills, which is human
Mhm.
intelligence skills. Um, what's your thoughts about the whole scenario about how things are moving so fast and the type of leadership you need and just in life in general?
This is such a big question that we need like 3 more hours to talk about. So I'll
That's
try
a
to condense it as much as I can. And I'm going back to my rhetoric roots is understanding what another person is trying to say. Are they doing a good job? And how can we work together to have an extraterrestrial habitation, help life on Earth, and how basically make artificial intelligence work for good. And what concerns me is that the people that have the loudest voices right now aren't necessarily interested in listening to what the other side has to say. And so I would hope that more and more people would actually use artificial intelligence and but would use it for good. Like, how do we use it to work more quickly? I'm using it every day at Space Force Partners to help me create drafts for documents that I could now go in and personalize and make sure, make the most sense for me. But it saves a bunch of it's a time saver. There's just a lot of ways it can be used for good and to help us move even more quickly. So I think it's going to help us speed up our today's version of the industrial revolution. I think it'll help us speed up a lot of things that are happening right now. But I think the human intelligence, you can't overlook that part, the human intelligence piece of it, because it will get out of control if nobody's looking out for everybody. So if we all sort of agree to work together for good. I mean, you mentioned that a little bit how do I put this? We are working together currently in space. Look at the space station. Like, our astronauts up until very recently were using Russian um,
Absolutely.
rockets to get up there, and so we can all work together. There's people from all different nations working together on the ISS currently. So, and the Artemis Accords now are in existence. The EU is in the process of finalizing their version of the Artemis Accord. So we can play nice in space. How do we translate that back to Earth and use these tools that we now have that we never had before to help us get those goals and get there more quickly? So I think there's a good way to combine both, but for sure the high needs to be there.
Yeah, we need to have that high there for sure. You know, it's interesting. Somebody I spoke to recently said, not in a bad way, dictators usually retain control by starting a war with somebody so that people forget what they're doing and they go against that. If aliens attacked, all of a sudden we'd all be together,
Yep,
probably.
we would definitely be a united front, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I hope it
and
doesn't get to something catastrophic like that, but yeah,
right.
that's
So
yep.
it is fascinating, and I do think that in my opinion, AI is probably going to do what maybe the internet didn't totally do that they thought was going to do, is like allow us to have more time to do
Yes.
more important things, which was the promise in the first place. And I
Mhm.
think AI will do that, but I agree. You need human intelligence, you need human heart, you need all that as much as anything, because they found out that belonging is actually the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything.
Yeah.
And if you ever saw the movie Her, when he falls in
Uh-huh.
love with her, and then he's pissed off that she's in love with 10 million other people too.
Yep.
Or whatever. So you need to belong.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You know, in LA we say keep them wanting more so that we can do a sequel. So we probably do need to do a sequel. But in the meantime, I got one more question here is Klein told me in 2021, he said, Mark, the year 2020, it flew by slowly. And I thought, what a great line. And I think we still feel it because it feels like it was yesterday and years ago at the same time for many people. So with all that said, and we're halfway through 2024 now, what are you most grateful for? And also, what are you most hopeful for?
Well, what am I most grateful for? That is also a hard one to answer because there's a lot of things. I thank myself every day for the situation that I'm in and the family that I have and the friends that I have. So I think I'm most grateful for just the support that I have around me.
Cool.
And what I'm most exciteful and most hopeful for is that there are so many new things happening and I get to be involved in that too, in furthering science and so the innovations that we're just on the cusp of realizing and how it's going to help humanity. And I'm really hopeful that I will get to help humanity in my own little way, whether it's through encouraging girls and women to get into STEM fields, to supporting each other, to seeing more and more women at these conferences that I'm going to, and also just literally helping humanity. Some of the missions in our pipeline are just absolutely, it gives me goosebumps to think about what's in there and how we can help them. So I just want to spread the word, on the exciting things that are happening and how people can be a part of that. But I think also too in space in general, everybody is going to be a part of it. And I don't think the public realizes that now. We'll need writers, we'll need chefs, we'll need, almost every single occupation we will be needed in space. That's the exciting part.
No, that's it. Well said. So I'm really glad that you're a leader who cares about space and you're watching over it for us. So that's pretty cool. And thank you so much for sharing all your experiences and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.